we are children of the greatest creative force in the entire universe, and we should act like it.
Oh yeah.
We should be the most creative people on the planet, and we're not. And it is a shame, and I want to help people in the Christian circles get there.
Stay tuned for the show. Poets at War is sponsored by the following.
I'm Ian Wilson, and I create graphic art using primarily traditional methods, supplementing with digital where it's needed. I use a real pen, a real paper, a real graphite to make my art. I like to feel my art. I've always been this way. I love the feeling of a pen or pencil in my hand, the sound of graphite scratching paper, and I love the sight of a nice black line making its way across the page. So why choose traditional art over digital? Traditional art has an organic, natural quality that seems to be missing from most digital illustrations. The illustrated books and comics that were made in the days before digital have an excellence and staying power that is just as vibrant now as it was decades ago. These are the stories that stay with you. Dr. Seuss, Winnie the Pooh, Where the Wild Things Are. People still read these. I'm currently working on my own graphic novel series, Legend of the Swordbearer, and I've also had the privilege to draw graphics for 2 motion comic series, along with illustrations for a small magazine, Logosophia magazine, and various book covers. Don't let traditional art fade into the dust. Help me keep it alive. You won't regret it. Visit my website at ianthomaswilson.com for more info.
Greetings, soldiers! Keven Newsome is on the show today. He is speaking of geekery, all things geekery, music, games, authorship. He has many books and things to talk about, many things to discuss. Let's join him in the trenches on Poets at War.
All right, Joshua, I'm going to end mine right there. I'm actually just going to stop the recording.
Okay, that's fine. Not a problem. I'll keep mine going for my part.
And you can take over. It's all you
right.
know.
Awesome. So how have you
so
been
much,
lately?
by the way. Thank
Oh
you
yeah,
so much.
absolutely. Absolutely. I hope it was good and not too terribly deep.
I went a lot deeper than some of my other ones and a little more interviewee than what I would normally do. But it was good. It was good.
That's good. I'm glad to hear it. So I have done a little bit of research on you, but I have been so slap bang busy because I've got the Fight Laugh Feast conference coming up, and I've got I'm working that situation. I don't know if you know those guys or not, but I'm doing media for them, and so I've been crazy busy trying to get my house in order for that because my whole family's going. Yeah, so I guess I'm interested more in what you do. I kind of get the podcast aspect, and I couldn't get a whole lot deeper. So tell me kind of what you do and all that kind of stuff.
I do a little bit of everything. The podcast is an experiment. I'm not entirely sure how sustainable it is. One of the things that I'm wanting to do is move into positioning myself as a creativity consultant, a creativity expert, with the idea that to be able to help Christian creatives become the best creative they can be. So one of my passions is to help people fully realize what it means to be excellent in their creativity, in their pursuit of following God, because we are children of the greatest creative force in the entire universe, and we should act like it.
Oh yeah.
We should be the most creative people on the planet, and we're not. And it is a shame, and I want to help people in the Christian circles get there. I think we can get there with some little guidance. So part of the podcast is really trying to set myself up as an authority in that area, talk to some creatives. And what I've run into already is a difficulty in sorting out the people who are okay producing mediocre creativity versus the people I really want to talk to, the really excellent creatives who aren't getting the visibility that they need to get.
Right.
Those are the people I'm looking for. And I found a few. Hopefully I found one in you.
I hope so.
But that's what I'm looking for. So that's.
Oh, I lost you. My audio wise. Yep. Is that a cable?
Yep. Did you get it back?
Yep. Got it back.
So that's the direction I'm going. I'm actually working on a doctorate degree that's going to help me get there, and hopefully I'll be able to position myself in that direction. I am a multi-passion creative that has dabbled in lots and lots of different things. I am a classically trained musician. I've been a musician since I was 6 years old. My primary instrument was trombone. I have a music degree that I specialized in low brass instruments. My secondary was classical guitar, so I'm also a guitarist. I'm a worship leader in my church. I play about 12 different instruments. I'm also a published fiction author, and I dabble in video production. And here recently, I've been getting into live stream gaming. So,
yeah,
a little
fun.
bit
I love it.
of everything. And the one discipline that I sort of let kind of die away in high school, I was a pencil sketch artist. And I had to prioritize. And so in college, I spent more time on my music and writing than and I kind of let that sort of die away and let my wife and my daughter handle that kind of art.
Yeah, totally. That's good to hear. So are you focusing more on as a, positioning yourself as an expert in that situation? Are you focusing more on getting people's work shown, or are you focusing more on craft? Or a little both?
A little both right now. I'm really focusing on making sure I have all of the knowledge and skills and foundations that I need to be able to help others.
Gotcha.
Right now, I'm trying to position myself into these communities of artists, filmmakers, musicians, writers, and things like that. I'm already pretty active in some of the Christian writing communities, but some of these musician and filmmaking communities, I'm not quite so active. So I'm trying to get involved and get to know some people in those areas, and actually find ways to produce some products to actually show these, hey, I do know what I'm talking about in these areas. I'm not worried about the writing side of it. I can kill the writing all day long. But it's been 20 years since I actually produced anything musically that somebody could consume. I used to compose and write music, and I never published anything, but it's a product I could put out there if I wanted.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's been a long time, and I haven't really done anything since. And film wise, I'm trying to get into script writing, so to try to get myself into the film community. And I got a couple of things I want to work some scripts out on. It's a timing thing. I work full time as a worship pastor, so just having the time to finish my next novel, write a script, produce some music, all of the things. Meanwhile, I just want to go home, kick my feet up, and play video games and live stream and do that. So too much I want to do and not enough time to do it.
I hear that. Well, I'm sort of in a camp where I have an expert sort of thing, but my expertise is specifically more geared toward not just fatherhood, but family dynamic in general. I want whoever is listening to be their family's bard. And I got into that a little bit, but the idea that there's somebody in the family usually who is the keeper of the stories, whether they be fiction or the family stories, or you're the one who archives, you're the one who makes the video for Nana's funeral, whatever the case may be. You're the person who keeps and tells those stories. And I think that's an incredibly important aspect of family dynamic, and every
Sure.
family pretty much has one, but if they don't, their family severely lacks.
Well, my wife is the one who remembers all the things.
Mhm.
As far as the documenting, I've
Yeah.
done lots of videos and stuff. We've taken Disney vacations every other year, and rather than just taking a whole bunch of pictures, I've always filmed and
Mhm.
created a movie for them.
Yep.
And that's been really, really special.
And
They've
those
enjoyed
stories
that.
are, and telling those stories, and crafting them in a way that is actually excellent. I think that some people look at it and they go, well, that didn't make money, it doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't. I'm finding more and more that I'm getting further and further away from thinking what is sustainable, because quite frankly, the last 10-15 years have proved that virtually nothing is sustainable. To me, the whole entire economy is moving toward one of where labor is the most prized and most sought after, um what do you call it, asset,
Right.
and so for me, if I can be the one who writes uh the most best stories in the most consumable way possible, like, I'm going to win. I don't know if that means I'm going to make money, but I'm going to win. I'm going to
Right.
win the goodwill of everyone. I'm going to have friends when times are hard. I'm going to, and it's not a manipulative thing. It's just me doing what God gave me to do.
Well, and I always coach young creatives, especially writers. I talk to a lot of writers, that if you think you're getting into this for the money, you're going to be very disappointed.
Yep.
Most years, I've been doing this for a long time. I've got an entire series that's published, 4 books, and they're on all the platforms. They're
Mhm.
everywhere. You can get them easy. Um, Most years, I am doing good if I've made enough royalties to pay for my website.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
But I've been in the writing and publishing game, and I tried that avenue for years, and I've made virtually nothing on it. But where I have made headway in a lot of things is, I have a friend who uh literally all we've done is we're in a group chat on Facebook, and we've been friends for on there for a while, and I introduced him to my group of friends, and we're all just kind of this group. I'd love to add you if you're on Facebook at some time, but
Sure.
we're called the Wonder Brood. That came from the phrase "brood of writers," which this friend of mine actually coined, which was kind of a play on Jesus's words. But we're sort of an inkling, Tolkien
Mhm.
Lewisy kind of group. And he, I had a situation where I just threw up prayer to them, saying, we have to make a trip soon to my mother because she's not doing well, and she's sick, and we need to get to her, and we need to fix our car's brakes before we do that. And no joke, this friend who just has known me for years, whatever, said, I got you, and he took care of it. you know
Mhm.
and like, that kind of a thing is God. That's not just my friend, that's me being faithful as a friend,
Right.
and being a faithful server of soul food, the stories. And so, like, I don't understand it all, and I'm not saying that I don't plan, and I don't, I'm not excellent in what I do. I try to be as excellent as possible,
Sure.
but I'm not made to worry about that. I'm made to worry about the craft and the beauty and the whatever else. And I
Right.
believe in time and in his ways and his purpose for my sanctification, God is going to bring the people into my life that I need to help me with those other aspects. And so, constantly my wife says, you're worrying about this, you're worrying about that, don't worry about that. Right? Are you writing? If you're not writing, I know, because you're not feeling well. You know. And so it's and every single time, you know, the Bible says in Psalms with David, I've never seen the righteous begging bread. And I really do believe that. I believe that there are times where he brings us as low as we think we can go, and then, you know, if we continue in our faithfulness, raises us from the ashes. This is his pattern continually. And so, you know, I'm trying to lean into that with everything I've got at this point in my life. I'm 32, and you know, I know so many other people with this sort of thing. And I'm not saying don't go into something that you know is going to fail. But if you know that you're actually called to do it, which I had 10 years of calling, you know, or just God's just calling, do your writing, even when people tell you that you're wasting your time. You know?
Yeah. You've got to love the craft. I mean, this is what I tell young writers on the backside of you. If you're in it for the money, you're going to be disappointed. You've got to be doing it because you love what you do.
Right. And you're not going to love it all the time. That's the other thing. No. But you love what is being created, and you love and you cannot get away from the process, whether it is a continual frustration or whether it is bliss and joy. The fact is, you cannot get away from it. God will not let you get away from it. Right.
Oh yeah. So, it's been a pretty dry for me on the writing front, but I think about it all the time. It's like, I need to do this. Nothing. I need to be doing this. And then something else comes up, other project needs my attention. And, you know, a few days pass. I need to get back to this. I've got 2 or 3 projects that I want to write, and just waiting for the motivation to get started again.
Yeah. I hear you.
Can't not do it.
Whereabouts are you in the grand United States, I'm guessing?
South Carolina.
South Carolina. How far from the Georgia border?
We are about smack in the middle of the state.
Smack in the middle. Okay. Yeah, I'm in Augusta. So okay. I'm not terribly far from your general region. So
no, I'm originally from Mississippi, and we go to Augusta, go through Augusta on the way to visit family all the time.
Yep.
I've actually got some college friends in North Augusta, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So I just asked because I'm just trying to understand a little more of the context in which you live. And I've been mulling over, as you can tell, I think pretty deeply about certain things. I feel embarrassed sometimes, you know, going in that deep on some stuff, but other times I'm like, nah, people need to really think about this. The South is one of those things where creativity is, it's really been driven by Nashville. You know, as far as our regional creative center, our Hollywood is Nashville. And the thing with Nashville, I have found is, are you familiar with Flannery O'Connor?
Yes.
Okay. She wrote that the South is not so much Christ centered as it is Christ haunted. Okay. And I tend to agree with that. And one of the ways that I really find it Christ haunted is we look at Nashville and we see a microcosm of the entire South when it comes to creativity. We see these wonderfully creative people like Dolly Parton and Johnny Cash in the earlier days, you know, when it really started getting big. And even before that, where they go and they make the music and they travel. And what does the church do? The church drops them because they're not showing up every Sunday.
Right.
Because they're called to travel. Now, there's certain amounts of stuff that they still owe the church, but the church was only concerned with what's owed to them, right? And so we have this mutual, well, you're not caring about me, so I'm not caring about you. And what happens? They get into drug issues, they get into all sorts of things. They tend to liberalize in their theology and the way that they think about things, and they bring in friends that accept them as who they are, even though who they are is getting worse and worse. And this is just a microcosm of what I've seen in the South. The South has a problem culturally with artists because the artists have had a problem with them and vice versa. And I'm trying to think more and more along the lines of how we, as a church community, a local church community, can help artists. One of the shining examples that I can think of is died 25 years ago, like 2 days, as of 2 days ago, 25 years, is Rich Mullins. Are you familiar with him?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Are you a little familiar with his story or no?
Yeah, well, a little bit.
A little bit.
Not as familiar as my wife is.
Yeah. Well, he actually he had a situation where and he was a little weird, you know, theologically on some things, and he was very much like he loved Jesus. And one of the big things that he wanted to do, he did not want to go to Nashville. He did not want to become a star, but he was pushed in that direction by his friends. And he found that he was so tired and sick of the money and the lifestyle and everything else that he said, church, my church, will you take all of my money, pull out of it an average living American wage for me, and use everything else to the glory of God? And they did. And I'm not saying that you need to go that far. Like, you can take a little bit more money. It's your money. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even going that far, because the fact is you earned it. But whatever the case may be, whatever goodness of your heart, if an artist is going and making the money and then ministering to his church by giving back as much as he possibly can, whatever that may be. And even in my case, I'm giving tons of extra time to my church. I work for my church. I earn some money from them, but I give a whole lot of extra hours to our church, you know?
Sure.
And so to me, like, there's so much that the church needs from an artist just in craft. And there's so much that they need, you know, if you're a big star and you're traveling, from the monetary. And so if you're giving back to the church and the church isn't giving back to you, then yeah, there's going to be resentment. You know, the church needs to be ministering to your soul, you know, to everything that you and your family need. And there's so much there that has just fallen apart because of the way all of this works. I don't know if and this is pretty big picture, but like, I don't know if you've noticed that in the culture. I really want to get to the culture of creatives in the South.
Well, and part of it, I would hazard to say a great majority of the problem has come from our education system getting rid of the creative arts.
Yes.
So we're not teaching the next generation the creative arts in a way that elevates it to the status of sports. So sports rules in the South right now.
Yes.
And that has, as the generations are losing their creative education, it's coming into the church. And so we've seen that, you know, children and students and even young adults are not participating in the creative arts in the church. They're not going into the adult workforce as creatives. It's the funnel of creatives being generated in the South is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I would actually hazard to think that it's partially part of what's causing our mental health crisis.
Oh yeah, especially in the South.
That we've taken so much creative arts out of our education system. So where do you fix it? You got to get the creative arts elevated again to a place of importance as education. I made the argument when I was in college that you could throw out almost every subject that's in school, teach creative arts, and through the creative arts, educate across all other subject lines. You can teach science through creative arts, English through creative arts, history through creative arts. You can teach all these other things through creative arts, but you can't go the other way.
Right.
You can't teach history and teach creative arts at the same time, but it can go vice versa. So it is more, to me, it it is a better educational target to focus on creative arts and to try to get other disciplines cross-taught through creative arts than it is to throw out creative arts.
And this is the goal of a lot of homeschooling, not all, but a lot of homeschooling, where if you have a child who thinks more strictly mechanically, you can teach them more traditionally, give them the structure they need, or you can go more creative. I'm finding more people going more creative, I think, just because the pendulum has swung so far in the direction of creating drones for the workforce.
Right.
But the other factor is classical schools. Classical schools have this exact philosophy that you're speaking of. It's the concept that through the teaching of things like Latin and creative thinking and all these other sorts of things, and giving a real liberal arts type of education, you are essentially creating a situation where people learn to think. And if people can learn to think, they can learn how to solve problems. And in that way, creative thinking is actually more pragmatic than the opposite, so yeah, I mean, some of the guys that are doing really good on that are the guys up in Moscow, Idaho, with Logos and some of those other sorts of things. I was more traditional homeschool, and I tend to prefer that, just because it leaves so much more room for people who have problems like I did with the dyslexia and other things. And but I was able to excel in other areas while I got better in the areas that I lacked. So that was really, really helpful. So with that said, what I guess the thing that I'm most interested in this conversation is like, where you have a love, obviously, for people who have felt like you, who feel the need to create beautiful and amazing things, and are just having a hard time getting it to people who are also just struggling with the struggle of not just getting the art out, but actually like creating it and all that other kind of stuff. Like, tell me more about that, and what you hope to accomplish in the lives of specific individuals. Like, who are your avatars, so to speak, of people that you want to really help?
What I have found is some of the most creative, innovative people out there are all in the indie areas. So the indie musicians, the indie writers, the indie filmmakers, who are Christian, these are the ones that are creating the most innovative art that's coming out of Christianity right now. But because they're indie, they are not getting the broad range of exposure that they deserve. Because they're not getting the broad range of exposure that they deserve, this kind of innovation and creativity is not gaining traction. It's not transforming the industry. So the industries are going backwards, because all they're doing is chasing the ideal ideal target audience in order to sell more music, in order to get more plays on the radio, in order to get more books off the shelf, in order to get more of your films into churches, things like that. So there's certain formulas that are being used that are becoming very, very cliche in a lot of ways. And so my goal is to try to find ways, what I ultimately want to do. And this is a huge, big picture thing, and I can't do it by myself.
Right.
I want to see these industries changed to where innovators and highly creatives are pushing the industry in such a way that the world sees that, hey, these Christian people have some of the most creative people on the planet. We need to be paying attention to them, not just because of their message, but because of their artistry. And through their artistry, they are also getting the message. And so we were seeing some of this in the 90s in the music industry.
Yes.
We had a lot of the most creative Christian music came out of the 90s and the early 2000s. Some of the innovations in storytelling from a Christian perspective, highly innovative in the 90s and early 2000s. We had a culture shift in the way people saw what Christian fiction could be in the 90s. And you know, I contribute, like Frank Peretti as the Godfather really created a paradigm shift in Christian fiction when he wrote started writing This Present Darkness and such. That was paradigm shifting in the way Christian fiction could be approached. We haven't really seen these kinds of shifts in the Christian film industry, because the Christian film industry is they're making films for themselves.
Right.
They're not really necessarily making films for a secular audience.
I'm seeing a bit of change in that slowly.
It's slow coming. There are a handful of people, but again, they're very independent, and they are not getting the exposure they need to get.
Yeah, the two exceptions I would say as far as how independent they are, that I would bring up are, and yeah, there's an influx of Mormons in it and everything else, and everyone always tends to talk about that. I'm not a fan of The Chosen, but I like Angel Studios. I like what they're doing. I am a big fan of their upcoming Wingfeather saga. I love the books. I've got the books over there on the top of that shelf over there. And Andrew Peterson is just amazing with what he does. I don't always agree with his politics and some of the stuff that goes on at the Rabbit Room, but I do like those people immensely. And the other one that I'll mention is Marcus Pittman. He's created lore.tv. Are you familiar with those guys?
Lore.tv?
Yeah, LOOR.tv.
No, I'm not familiar with them.
They are creating a direct Netflix competitor, direct streaming competitor, and they are seeking to create a place that is run by Christians, and essentially, as long as you are not crossing actual biblical lines, you can put whatever you want up. You know, they're going more of the sort of libertarian idea route, and they are creating something very, very good as far as the people that they're actually getting. They're getting some folks that the Hollywood is cast off, like Chris, for last name starts with an S. He created he was heavily involved with Lilo and Stitch. He's doing an animated show. There's some other things going on over there, but they have some big industry people, both Christians and non, and they're actually getting quite a lot of press and interest from big capital investing, you know. So.
Yeah. And that kind of reminds me, and I'm not necessarily saying the example that you gave falls into this category, but that reminds me of the other big issue that I think needs to be addressed, in that we have spent much of the past 30 years creating a subculture of creativity within the Christian mindset within the church. And nowhere in the history of the church has that ever been the case.
Correct. Yeah.
Except for these past 30 years.
Right.
And I think that's been a mistake. We should have never started creating our subculture. We should have always been encouraging Christians to engage in the secular markets of their craft. And
not just that, but also even within our own social circles in the church, we should never be creating, you should get together with your creative friends and think creatively. Don't get me wrong, but we should not be setting ourselves apart from the church
Right.
in it when it comes to our own, creative endeavors and that sort of a thing.
Right.
That's something where we get pigeonholed even within the church socially, and that can be a really big problem.
So I'm seeing the shift. So the culture shift has been um, shifting more in the writing side of
Mhm.
things than I've seen it in the music and the film industry, which is odd because technologically music has led the way.
Mhm.
So the music went digital before books went digital. So technology and the way that you think about consuming music has led the way, but the culture shift in the writing industry seems to be going in the right direction.
Mhm.
We got more Christians that are saying, you know what, I want to write quality fiction that can be consumed by the general market. I want it to be positive. I want it to be clean, and I want to engage people in a creative way that can point them to that if they were to dig in and want to find out more and address like ultimate questions,
Mhm.
address life questions and things like that within these books, subtle things that can drive them to Christianity without beating them over the head with Bible verses.
Right.
Right. So I'm seeing that more in the writing industry than I am anywhere else. The music industry, we need worship music. We're always going to need worship music. Why worship music has become the primary form of entertainment
Mhm.
for Christian music, I have no idea. Why are we doing that?
It's because
There's
I have an answer for that. It is because we have a low view of worship.
you're exactly right. And here at my church, we are very um I'm very picky about the music that we do.
Mhm.
I have a list of about 4 or 5 questions, criteria that every song that we want to consider to be sung as a worship song has to go through.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of good songs that are out there that we've crossed off the list. Say, nope, this doesn't make the cut. It's not going before our people.
Mhm.
But the songs that are the most creative, most innovative, that are telling the right kind of stories, that are not worship music, not being put on the radio.
Oh yeah.
And that needs to change.
Oh yeah. And then there's people who've been around forever doing that, like Skillet. you know, they've been doing their thing for years and years and years. I love John Cooper. I love his theology. Great guy. But he's one of those few guys that's just stood his ground the entire time and continues to stand, and
Yeah,
I
if you're one of the elders in the Christian music industry, you get a pass on these rules.
Oh yeah, exactly. But he doesn't get played on the radio either. That's the thing. He
Not
has
a
his
lot,
own little
no.
following. You know what I'm saying? Like he does his couple crossover hits every now and then when he has to. But it's like
Yeah, and they water it down. They take all the electric
yeah, they take
guitar
all
out.
the edge out of his stuff. But it's like you said, music leading. I think the music industry itself has become, when the RIAA thing kind of started happening in the early 2000s, we had Napster, we had, LimeWire, we had all these other sorts of things.
Yeah.
The industry was so grasping that it caused us to have what is essentially, and yes, there are alternatives like Amazon Music, but they're also from a big conglomerate. We basically have Spotify, and that's it now.
Right.
And the fact is, everybody gets to join in, but everyone only gets a tiny piece because we're grasping. This is what the scripture calls grasping. This is the I don't like using the term greed because it has a lot of cheesy connotations, but grasping gives you a better idea of what scripture is trying to get at. It's the idea that I need every single ounce of my, feedback from you. There's no room for like the gleaning of the fields, like with Ruth, right? There's no room for the little leftovers being dropped here and there. And I find the idea the entire system of intellectual property is messed up within the United States, because we have systems that were built during the time of player pianos still in effect. And to me, I feel like anybody should be able to take my characters, my worlds, my stories, and run with them in their own way and let the market decide, because we know who is making what now. It's not like you can fake being Joshua David Ling very well. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And I, from my official platform, can very clearly say this is a fake. Don't deal with this, right?
The days of having to mail yourself a poor man's copyright are over. Nobody
Right.
is going to steal your stuff.
Right. And so to me, the fact that I can if I have so many stolen, quote unquote, songs, movies, whatever the case may be, that people that will pay great money to see me at a convention, I've won. You see what I'm saying? Like that's positive, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be physical. People will pay to see me on a Zoom call, you know, whatever the case may be. There are people at that level who are still nickeling and diming people over the fact that they downloaded a song illegally, they downloaded a movie illegally, right? And to me, like, sure, legalities, you know, Christian, what's that? I'm not even going to go into that situation. My point is, the music industry has stopped leading because the music industry has nothing left but one giant outlet that is full of grasping, and they're trying to keep it that way as close as they can. That's why the Christian music industry has fallen off from when we had all this creativity down to what's the bare minimum that we know is going to get a consistent result. People want consistency in their money more than they want to risk.
So they use a formula. They target everything to Becky. You know,
and the only reason that the movie industry is still trying on both sides, the woke side and the Christian side, you know, whatever, is because that is the only left, really, because academia doesn't do this really anymore, is that's the one arena left for philosophical ideas on a mass global scale. Well, you can push an agenda, whatever the agenda is, good or ill, better with a $25 million film than you can with the biggest political campaign on the entire planet, you know? And so to me, that's why the stories are the big battleground right now. I think music will come back, and it is coming back in its own little pockets, but I think platforms are a big issue. I think Christians aren't creating them in many cases, and they're trying in for various places, but they're using master's coin you know, to do it with Amazon Web Services and all these other sorts of things. And we don't need to create a parallel economy to do any of this, but we do need to, you know, I was listening because I was doing a news show. I was editing a news show. It's one of the things that I do for my general daily living, and they were talking about some of the this conservative news show. They were talking about how we basically had two voting companies do the voting machines. Now, I'm not talking anything about the voting and what was legit and whatever else, but I'm talking about specifically the fact is we had two private companies creating 100% of the voting machines in the United States. And we had no one who was purchasing them know anything about how the machines worked. Unfortunately, we don't want to make anything from scratch these days. Nobody does. And until we start knuckling down and doing the hard things, and owning what we actually create, we're going to continue to have problems. That doesn't mean you shouldn't post and all on YouTube and TikTok and everywhere else. You should. But you should also be seeking to create the most ownable things that you can while you're at it, you know?
Right. And we should also not be afraid of technology and
Mm-hmm.
adopting new ways of building our platforms and getting our message and our
We should
work
be
out
as
there.
just as innovative as in our art.
Well, and historically, Christians have always been early adopters of technology.
Mm-hmm.
God has always been one of the earliest adopters to get the message of the gospel out, or to get his message out. Historically, I think of um so you look at when Moses is writing the Ten Commandments, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So the Ten Commandments are given to him written on tablets. What you don't realize is that writing in that particular method was a new technology, was a new innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately, within just probably couple of hundred years, God is using the newest innovation and technology to get his message out to his people,
Yep.
to spread the message. We see part of the success of the spreading of the early church was thanks to the technology of the Romans, who built the road systems,
Yep.
things like that. The radio, the early adopters of the radio were putting sermons on the radio, things like that. And I think somewhere along the line in the past 50, 60 years, and I'm going to blame the rise in interest in eschatology. We became scared of being early adopters of technology. And I'm blaming eschatology because how many times have you heard of a new technology and somebody has claimed that might be the mark of the
Oh yeah.
beast?
Oh yeah.
Right?
And let's narrow it down a little. Not all eschatology. That's dispensationalism.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I think we got to get over this. So I think we've got to be early adopters. We've got to see the new technology and not be afraid of it. A lot of churches, a lot of ministries, a lot of Christians and creatives have missed the boat when it comes to something like TikTok.
Oh yeah.
The TikTok format
Mm-hmm.
is the next iteration of social media.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely is. There's a reason YouTube and Facebook and Instagram have all copycatted TikTok.
Well, and the biggest thing that I hear from people about TikTok is they say it's training us away from having longer form memories and all this other kind of stuff. And I say, okay, well, I specifically address that problem in the fact that I release epic poetry through that platform in
Right.
bite-sized chunks, that hopefully gets them to watch the next part. So I'm sitting here going, you can address those problems from within
Right.
and take all the positives at the same time,
And it's increasingly becoming more of a search engine type of thing. So people
Mhm.
aren't necessarily going there for their entertainment, and so thus training themselves with shorter attention spans with their entertainment, but they're going to get educated, and part of that includes pushing them to a place where they can get more information.
Mhm.
So we don't have to focus on that part. We can say, hey, here's a short little tidbit of what I have to say. If you want to find out more, here's a place where you can get more information. And that's short, but it's also pushing them to a longer form. We just got to stop being scared of new technology and
Mhm.
new forms of getting the message out there. We've got to be innovative in those ways as well.
Are you familiar with Samuel Morse?
Maybe.
You're familiar with Morse code, I
Oh
assume.
yeah. Okay. So that's where you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know the story of Morse code or no?
I have known it in the past, but it's not. It's been filed away in long term storage. So
Short thing. Christian guy Samuel Morse. He was a Calvinist, Presbyterian guy in England. He actually gets a letter that says, while he was away from home, your wife has died, and don't come back immediately, because by the time you get here, the letter gets to you and you get back, or she'll be in the ground. Don't bother rushing back. he said there's got to be a way to fix this. Well, he was friends with some of the people who Benjamin Franklin's friends with. They were playing with electricity and whatever else, and they were talking about how fast it moves and their calculations on how fast electricity moves from one end to the other. And he said, I wonder if you can send a message along that. And they think he's crazy, right? But through that, God creates not only Morse code, a way to give messages really, really fast, but Morse code, the binary of Morse code, the concept of Morse code is exactly the thing that is built upon zeros and ones that we are communicating to this day with.
Right.
And I can actually see your face and you can see mine and hear these words. And that was a gift of God, you know. We see these sort of technological advancements all the time. One guy who's really good at talking about this is Marcus Pittman of Lore. So I definitely encourage you to seek him out and see it, because he's on tons of people's podcasts. He's just trying to get the word out. So I definitely commend him to you. But yeah, I mean, we're wrapping up here, I think, but I'm just really interested in kind of where you're coming at it, because you're really interested in coming alongside of guys who've felt the same way you do. And probably have other friends that you have in mind when you're thinking of this sort of thing too, from what I'm hearing. But I just, you know, I think that aspect doesn't get talked about enough. It does, but it's usually in sort of a, you know, Rabbit Room tends to have sort of a elevated view of what friendship means in ways that I'm kind of on certain fronts. But just being a Samwise to your fellow neighbor as best as you can, giving them soul food when you can, giving them encouragement. I know some of my friends who've really benefited from mine, and I've vastly benefited from theirs. And just knowing, you know, so Fight Laugh Feast, this conference that I'm going to be going to, I went there last year and I talked with a pastor there. And we were talking about my strange eclectic clothing, which is designed to be very PT Barnum, get people's attention, that sort of a thing. It's but I was talking to him about it and the theology surrounding it and whatever else, and he said, well, you know, tell me about your goals and that sort of thing. I told him why I want to write stories and hopefully, you know, make money for my family and all that other kind of stuff. And he said, well, good, don't stop. And I, you know, this is no condemnation on my pastors that I've had growing up and even now, but I nearly broke down and I told him, you know, I've never heard that from a pastor. And he started to tear up. And he's a really strong, masculine kind of man that isn't, you know, in these, he doesn't cry easily at all. But I could just see in his eyes, like, that's insane, you know. And I told him about my dad and what he gave to me, you know, the covenant of blessing that we've had as a family, the things that we've shared. And I want to give that to all of my friends and my family. I want there to be so much joy and encouragement that it is exported to the world. And I really, I see that same thing in you, and I'm praying that you succeed, brother. I really do. And anything I can do to help, and I mean that sincerely, you just let me know. Okay. Sure. Anything I can promote or help with, you just let me know. And, like I said, if you want to join the Brood of Riders, the Wonder Brood, you let me know. You want to do whatever the case may be, I can connect you with folks. Just let me know. So where can people find your stuff and plug anything you want to plug?
Yeah. So my primary series that's out right now is the Winter series. It's you know, you might consider it upper level YA or adult YA. There's a subgenre that's kind of being created where there's a YA for grown-ups kind of thing. But it's about a college girl who is a new Christian. She has a gift of prophecy, and she doesn't know how to handle it. She doesn't know what to do, and winds up involved in trying to protect her friends from a satanic priest who is doing some nefarious things on campus. And we see this intertwined with flashbacks from 4 years earlier. So we got parallel stories that are happening her freshman year of college and her freshman year of high school. And so what we see is in college, we see this goth girl who's new believer, but she's messed up. She's got broken past. And then we see the innocent girl 4 years earlier that nothing's happened to yet. And so we get to see through the backstory her decline into the Gothic subculture, into deviant behavior, into all, and she goes through all of the worst things that life can possibly throw at a young girl. And then we see on the backside of that how she's been transformed and how God is using those unique experiences to bless and help other people. And so what I'm hoping people will get out of this, that there's always you can never get too far away from God. There's always hope. That it doesn't matter what you've been through, God can still use you. And God can take your unique experiences and use them in unique ways for unique situations that only you can speak into or help with because of what you've been through.
Right.
And I really want to help people to be encouraged through that. So there's 4 books, Winter, Prophetess, Acolyte, Mantle. It follows all 4 years of high school and college. College is the primary story. High school is sort of the secondary story that informs what's going on in the college story. And by the time you get to the end of it, the high school story has caught up with the first book, right? So we end in the last book in high school where the first book starts with her in college. So it's a cycle. That's my primary book. You can find that anywhere you would find books. I think it should still be in the Ingram system. Search for my name, Keven Newsome, Keven Newsome. It's the winter series. My website is keven.newsomecreative.net, or you can just go to newsomecreative.net and get to me there, and I've got all the links available as well. The first 2 books should be available as audiobooks as well. I've gone through some changes in the past 6 months, some branding issues. So I'm not entirely sure if they've got the right branding on them or the right covers. But there you go. Everything else should be available. Paperbacks and ebooks should be good to go with the right branding. So
wonderful. Good to hear. Well, appreciate you being on Poets at War, and everybody, be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War. God of songs.